Hi everyone, I hope you had a great week. This week in Level E, we're going to be going over lessons 97 through 100. You'll need worksheet 69 through 72, the practice sheet 10, fraction and percent circles, the tangram pieces, the goniometer, your 45-45 triangle and your 30-60 triangle, the math card games book, the fraction card deck, and the basic number cards deck. So lesson 97 does have a correction to the worksheets. So if your book was printed before March 10th of 2017, please go ahead and follow the link in the descriptions to find out what those corrections are. After exploring various polygons in the oral warm-up questions, we will find and draw common percentages of a circle. In the first activity, your child will find 50%, 25%, and 66 2/3% on the percent circle. Next, you'll move on to the worksheet. If your child prefers to use real tangrams instead of just the drawings on the worksheet, that's perfectly fine. They can go ahead and use those. You'll just need to pull out 2 of the largest triangles so that the child is left with 6 pieces and only 1 large triangle of each color. As you ask the questions about the tangram pieces, your child may find it easier to first find the fraction answer on the circle and then compare that, match that to the percent circle. So let me show you how that would work.
Okay, so let's review how to set up the circle. Here's the fraction circle, and here's the black circle that you cut out as well. I always start by covering up the 1, just sliding those 2 slits in together. So this would be 1/2, for example, and this would be 1/4, right? So the exposed white surface is what we're looking at for the amount of the circle, the fraction of the circle. So this is 1/4, and as you can see, there's the 1/4 number right there. So in this problem, on the worksheet, we're looking at what percent of the tangram pieces are parallelograms. Well, your child will find out that there's 12 pieces total and that 4 of them are parallelograms. So if we reduce 4/12, it becomes 1/3. If your child is still iffy on that, they can use their multiplication chart to figure out what the fraction reduces to. So we're going to look for 1/3 on our fraction circle. Okay, there it is. There's 1/3. The instructions say to find the percent of parallelograms. So I just found the fraction of parallelograms, that's 1/3. Now I'm going to use the percent circle, and I'm going to compare the open white space, the exposed white space, to the percentages. So I happen to know that 1/3 is 33.1/3%, but your child might not know that, and that's fine. But we can go ahead and compare the opening, and sure enough, that is the same. 33.1/3% is the same as 1/3. So let's say they just guessed it was 40%. Okay, we can compare, line up the one line here, and you can see that 1/3 is smaller than 40%, right? So here's the black underlying paper that's covering up the rest of the third, and here's 40%. So those are not the same size. So what we want to do is move this to where the exposed white area is the same size as the fraction, and that's at 33.1/3%. Now remember, in these lessons, your child is not expected to have mastered fractions and percents. All we're doing is exploring the relationship between the two and to show the children that yes, in fact, fractions and percents are related.
Okay, so now your child is ready to complete the worksheet, and after that you can play percentage and fraction war and then ask the in conclusion questions. In lesson 98, we will find percentages in circles and explore the sums of fractions and percents. After the oral warm-up questions, you'll have your child turn the fraction circle over and estimate where 1/4 is, and then turn it back over to see if the guess was correct. I like to either color the other side of the black paper or flip it over so that I can see the estimated fraction better. Let me show you how that looks.
Okay, so normally your circle would be like this, but for this exercise, I want you to flip it over and do the opposite. Instead of covering the 1, cover the 0. And then turn the fraction circle over and hand it to your child and say, can you estimate where 1/4 would be? So they just turn the circle until they think they've got it at where 1/4 would be. This will be my guess that this is 1/4. I flip it over and I look. Sure enough, I'm pretty darn close. 1/4. I could have moved it over a couple of millimeters and then I would have been right on 1/4. Okay, so you'll continue to ask them questions like this. You could ask, go ahead and estimate 3/4, for example. So there's 1/2, probably about here. I would say that that looks pretty close to 3/4 of the white part, right? So let's see. Sure enough, I was off almost as much as I was for the 4th, but I was pretty close. And it's just to get the children used to estimating how much something is, just like we did with inches and centimeters and meters and feet. It's the same idea with fractions and then also with percents. Okay, so the next activity that they're having your child do is to combine the percents and the fraction circles. So we're going to put the fraction circle on top of the percent circle, like so. And then your child is asked to set the percents to 75. So there's the 75% right here under the 0. I'll just hold that flap open so that you can see 75%. So we're lined up with 75%. And the question is, if we have 75%, what fraction do we have left over? And that is, if I flip up this a little bit, you can see the fraction of 1/4. So 75% plus 1/4 is 100%, or 1/2. So now the children, it's an interesting activity for them to see how the fractions and percents actually relate to each other. You should have your child try various fractions and percents. So for example, I'm going to turn this to 1/3. Okay, so I'm looking at the fraction 1/3, and I want to know what percent that lines up with. So not that what percent 1/3 is, but how much do I have to add to 1/3 in percentages to get to 100%? And that would be right here, 66 2/3. Okay, I'm going to put it back together again so you can see it on the line there and there. Okay, so 1/3 plus 66 2/3 would equal 1, or 100%.
When you get to the worksheet, encourage your child to estimate the fractions and percents before they actually measure with the circles. It's very tempting for kids to skip that part, but I think it'll be really fun for them to see, how close or how off they really are in their estimation skills. You can then ask the in conclusion questions and play percentage and fraction war game from the last lesson. Lesson 99 is a review and game day. So ask the oral questions and then have your child finish the review sheet. Once he or she has corrected any mistakes, play percentage war game, which is F48, or the percentage and fraction war game from the previous lessons. If your child was able to correct his or her mistakes and seems to understand the concepts covered in the review, then you most likely don't have to go back over the lessons that I'm going to list next. However, here are the lessons covered just in case you do feel like that your child needs that review. Okay, so if your child missed any of the oral questions, let's look at those first. For number 1, review the lesson 33. For number 2, review lessons 4 and 19. For number 3, review lesson 33 as well. In the Write the Answers section, for the first problem, review lesson 89. The second problem, lesson 98. And the third problem, lesson 13. For the Do the Calculations section, for the first problem, review lessons 21 and 22. For the second problem, review lesson 13. For the third problem, review lesson 68. And for the fourth problem, review lesson 59. For the tangram questions, you can review lesson 97. For the fraction matching section, review lesson 89. And for the word problem, you can review lessons 94 and 98. Okay, in lesson 100, we're going to be learning the term angle. We're going to measure angles with the goniometer and measure and add angles in a triangle. The warm-up is a multivide on practice sheet 11. Let's take a look at the goniometer and how to use it.
Okay, so for this activity, you're going to need your 45 degree angle triangle, your 30-60 degree angle triangle, and your goniometer. Now, you may not have ever seen this tool before. It's really interesting because you can measure angles with it. And if you look at the bubble, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can find a darker background. Here we go. So you can see this bubble right here. And if you look really close, I think your kids will have an easier time than you will see numbers under there. Okay, so here I have the 30-60 triangle, and I'm going to use my goniometer to measure this angle right here. And this says that it's 60 degrees. So this angle right here is 60 degrees. Let's measure the other side. Okay, this says that this angle is 30 degrees. Now, if you've never used one of these before, they do come apart and it's not broken. You can just snap these two pieces back together with the bubble on top and you're good to go. All right, let's look at what we can do with the 45 degree angle triangle. So let's make sure that it actually is 45 degrees. And sure enough, you can't see it, but I can see that this says 45 degrees. Let's find out what angle this is. Okay, this is 90 degrees. So we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay, so then the book has your child do some activities by combining the two triangles. So I have the 45 degree angle triangle, and I'm going to put the 90 degree angle up next to the 60 right here. So your child can add 90 and 60 and get 150, but we're going to check that addition and make sure that the goniometer agrees with your child's calculations. So let's just scoot that up. We got to have it sit on a little bit on top of the triangles. And there I have it lined up here with this line and lined up here with this one. So we can check what that says. And it says 150 degrees. Now, there's various activities. We can flip this around and measure these two angles combined. We can line our triangles up like this and measure this angle here. There's various activities that the book asks your child to do with these two triangles and with the goniometer. So go ahead and have them do those activities.
Okay, so I hope that that helped, especially if you've never used a goniometer before. If the worksheets, if you have a coil bound worksheet, then I would suggest pulling this particular worksheet out so that the goniometer can lay flat. Now you can read your child, some are more or less frustrated by having to deal with the coils. So if it's not a big deal to your child and you want to keep the worksheet in, that's fine. But I have found it easier to just pull the worksheet out so that the child can use it on a flat surface and the goniometer works a little bit better that way. So once the worksheet is complete, go ahead and ask the in conclusion questions and play Subtracting from 100 game, which is S33 in the Math Card Games book. And that's all for this week. I hope that you have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.